This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.
Well, you know him for many years as the musical director of the Saturday Night Live band and as a member of touring bands and working with obscure artists like Bob Dylan, Mick Jagger, Hall & Oates, David Bowie, Roger Waters, Tina Turner, so many more. He's got a new album with Leroy Bell. Stony Hill is the name of it. All the info at gesmithmusic.com. You can also find him on Facebook. He is G.E. Smith. How are you, man?
I'm good, Jonathan. How you doing?
Doing good. My first question is, you, the family, everyone's healthy in the inner circle, I hope?
We've been very lucky through this whole thing. Everything's good.
Is this the longest time you have stayed at your beautiful place in the eastern end of Long Island?
It sure is. That we were all here together. Yeah, you know.
That is God's country out there. Let me ask you, and this pertains exactly to the east end of Long Island. There were all these stories in the press about New Yorkers and other people coming out to their summer rentals like 2 months early. Have you experienced that? Has the city been a lot more crowded like in April and May than it normally is?
Yeah, there was right when the whole clampdown thing started, about a week into it. I don't know, somebody in a political position said something like, boy, if I had a house in the Hamptons, I'd go out there. Wham! Everybody came. And but what are you gonna do? I mean, you know, it's okay. People have houses here, so why not use them?
Right.
Perfect time.
In reading up on you, it seems that your parents were really cool. I mean, my parents were cool too, but I don't know if they were as cool as yours because they gave you a Martin guitar. That was your first guitar. And then the second guitar they gave you was a 1952 Telecaster.
Right. They didn't actually give me the Martin. My first guitar I got when I was 4. I went down in the basement with my mom. She was doing the laundry, and there was a guitar hanging on the wall. And I'm 4, right? I don't know what it is. I'm like, what's that? She says, that's a guitar that belonged to your Uncle George. I said, can I have it? Yeah. She gives it to me. It was the old beater from the 30s, you know, an acoustic guitar, collegiate brand. And I had that for a little while. And then a woman came over to the house one day when I was about 7, after I'd had that guitar for 3 years. And I was starting to learn some chords and stuff by then. And she said, oh, do you want a good guitar, a real guitar? I'm 7. What am I going to say? No. I said, yes, of course I do. So then she showed up with the Martin a day or two later. And like a 14-year-old Irish girl that was working as her babysitter to teach me some chords and stuff.
How was what kind of condition was the Martin? It was pretty good shape.
It was nice. It was. Do you play?
I do, yes.
Okay, so you know, it was a single O or a 0017, the all mahogany one. Probably a guitar from the 50s at that point. You know, a 40s or 50s guitar. And I had that for a couple of years. She let me use it for a couple of years, and then she took it back. I think it belonged to her husband.
And then the Telecaster, the 1952 Telecaster. Let's get to that, man.
My mother took me shopping when, for my 11th birthday, I needed an electric guitar at that point because I had an opportunity to make some money and, you know, playing in a band. So we went shopping and we found 2 decent used electric guitars. I mean, I come from a little town in Pennsylvania, you know, so there wasn't a lot around. There was a Gibson and this Fender. The Gibson was $200. The Fender was $100. So there was no question which one we were going to get. She paid it off $15 a month, you know, borrowed the 100 from the bank, and we got it. And I still have it. That
was my next question. Do you still have it? So
Oh,
what
yeah.
color is it?
It's a, you know, one of those like what they call butterscotch. You know, by now it's pretty brown and, you know, it's pretty worn and funky, but it's great. I use it all the time. I've used that on everything I've ever done.
Wow. I think some people call that the butterscotch telly. Is it a butterscotch telly?
With the black pickguard, you know, the typical 1952.
Keith Richards uses that a lot.
Exactly. He certainly has made good use of those.
I was lucky enough on a few occasions to actually attend some Saturday Night Live tapings or whatever you call them back in the day. The ones that come to mind, In Excess,
Mm-hmm.
and Whitney Houston. This had to be early 90s, I guess.
Right.
When you were I think you were still the musical director then,
I
right? Because
remember
they're till
just being
95 or
there.
something.
Was I there for Whitney? That might have been right after I was gone.
But here's the thing. The last time I actually saw you play live was at Irving Plaza when we could still go to concerts. This was several
Right.
years ago.
Remember that?
But you were playing with a band called Moon Alice, who I
Right.
loved.
Right. That was my buddy Roger McNamee, who's from the Bay Area out in California, and he had put together that band. Hired some pros, as it were, and we would go and play, and we had a lot of fun with that band.
I remember that night. What sticks out to me is this really, really, and it's such an amazing song in the first place, but you guys covered Whiter Shade of Pale. And I'm like, wow, these guys really cover that well, because that's like an amazing song.
Great song.
And you can either do it note for note, but if you don't do it that way, it could turn out terribly, or it could be amazing. And your guys' version was amazing. I think you had a pedal steel guitar player in the band at the time, right?
Absolutely. Barry Sless, great guitarist and great pedal steel player. He's still in Moon Alice with Roger. Yeah, they wanted to do Whiter Shade of Pale, and I love Procol Harum. I had seen Procol Harum in the 60s. When that song came out, I saw him at the Fillmore East a couple times down on 2nd Avenue. And I thought, well, let's not just do it just like the record, then it's just, so what? We're never going to sound as good as them doing it just like the record. So I kind of rearranged it a little, but it's such a great song.
It is. The new album from G.E. Smith and Leroy Bell is Stony Hill. Now, Stony Hill, is that a place?
Stony Hill is a place out here in Amagansett, but also to Leroy especially, he got that image of like pushing the stone up the hill, just trying to keep on doing it. And I think that several of the songs on the record directly address that kind of idea. And have you seen the video for America?
I did, yes.
It seems that it just fits in with everything that's happening right now, but we recorded that song in 2019, like last summer we were working on that song. And my wife, Taylor Barton, came up with the idea for the video and directed the video. We did that before all of this, we did that in January. So it just happens to fit right in with exactly what's going on now.
Well, and the album too, sort of in general, sort of is
Yeah.
a statement on democracy or whatever that means in our current state, right?
Yep. It sure is.
So where did you record the album?
We did it out here in Bridgehampton. A friend of mine, a guy named Larry Schmidt, who I've known for a long time, has a recording studio in his house. And it's called Applewild Farm. And we did it there. Then we also did some work in Brooklyn at Grand Street Studio, some overdubbing and stuff like that. But basically, we recorded it in Bridgehampton.
So tell us about Leroy Bell. I mean, I know that he is a songwriter and a performer in his own right. He's written songs for Elton John and Jennifer Lopez. Tell us more about Leroy.
Yeah. Leroy's a very talented guy. Taylor, again, my wife, Taylor Barton, she had been listening to Leroy for a while and just loved his voice. And one day she was playing one of his songs and she said, listen to this guy's voice. This would fit right in with the way you play. And I'd been looking for a singer for 30 years and never quite found right. And I said, yeah, he sounds right. So we invited him just out of the blue to come and visit for a few days. This was in January of 2019. It's like a year and a half ago. And he came. And as soon as we sat down and started playing, it just was easy and fun. And we got along great. And he writes really good songs. And we just had fun and started recording right away. Within a couple of days of him getting here, we started recording.
That's nice when that happens, right?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about touring and taking the new album on the road, but listen, we're in this situation. So had you had things already booked that you had to move to 2021, or?
We had big plans. Absolutely. We were going to debut the record at South by Southwest
Oh,
in March. And of course that got canceled. We were going to play there. And then we were starting to line up a tour. And, you know, as we all know, everything fell apart, and who knows when it'll come back together.
yeah. The new album from G.E. Smith and Leroy Bell is Stony Hill. We're talking to G.E. right now. I want to roll back the time a little bit here, G.E. If there was one moment in your time at Saturday Night Live that somebody asks you and a story immediately comes to mind where it was like maybe you were playing with somebody you couldn't believe you were playing with, or interacting with one of the hosts of this show, was there one moment that immediately comes to mind, or like, wow, I can't believe that happened?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a bunch, you know, that come to mind. Nirvana was on a couple times, and I got to talk to Kurt and Chris and about Leadbelly. I was sitting there talking to Kurt about Leadbelly, and he had a video of Leadbelly that we were watching, and we were talking about Leadbelly's guitar that he wanted to buy, you know, and that was great. But I mean, there was a time, a lot of times hosts, right, like male movie star hosts would be on, and they all smoked cigars. And back in those days, you could still smoke in a building. Now, in my office, in the music department office, I smoke cigars, so that's a place where people would come to smoke. So these guys would always wind up in my office, or like Willie Nelson would be in my office. He wasn't smoking cigars.
Yeah.
But like Arnold Schwarzenegger, different people, you know. Anyway, they would all say, "Oh man, I'm going to send you some good cigars. When I get back to Hollywood, I'm going to send you some good cigars." And they never did. But, you know, you say those things, show business. I never expected. Danny DeVito came in, smoked a cigar, said, "I'm going to send you some cigars." And he did. So I always remember that. Good guy, Danny DeVito.
Do you still watch the show?
I don't watch the show per se like Saturday night, but I'll check out if there's something on that made a big, like I'll watch Alec, you know, doing Trump, that kind of stuff. Alec's a neighbor out here, so. You know,
Yeah, he does a good job with that.
He does a good job. He's the greatest.
Yeah, I hope you won't mind indulging us in a couple more stories, because I know that your fans love to hear these stories, and our listeners really love to hear these stories. Again, sort of the same question, sort of anecdotes and things like that, because you've worked with so many amazing artists over the years. A story that comes to mind immediately when I ask you about a particular artist that you had worked with, and I want to start with Hall & Oates.
Okay, well, Daryl and John, that was amazing. When I met them and started working with them was in the summer. It must have been the summer of either 78 or 79. And they were in the studio working on a record. And they had been really big in the sort of mid 70s, you know, with Sarah Smile and Rich Girl. And then things had sort of cooled off a little bit. So when I first got hired, I was getting $200 a week, $100 to play the guitar and $100 to drive one of the station wagons as we went around. And we were not playing big places then. We were playing like joints, you know, bars and stuff. But then pretty quick, they wrote such good songs and obviously sang so great, you know, that it just picked up. And then it went from those station wagons to, you know, Learjets and limos, and stayed that way. I was with them from 79 to 85.
The next artist I want to ask you about is Mick Jagger.
Mick, I think I had met him a couple times, like in the city, you know, just kind of around in the music world, in the studios and stuff. And this is back in the days of answering machines. You know, I come home to my little apartment one night, and I play my messages, and there's a message from Mick. And he says, "I'm going to Barbados for a couple of weeks. Would you like to come with me and play the blues," as he said. So yeah, I'll go, you know. And
No, I got to do laundry.
yeah, and that was fabulous, you know, and because I'm a huge Stones fan, and had been from the first record, you know, when I was a kid, and to be around him and play. It was very difficult for me to not try to play like Keith Richards. You know, when I heard Mick's voice, he's like, I don't want to play that stuff. But this was in the period when he did a couple of solo albums. So I was on a couple of those solo albums with Mick, and he was great. He was very generous, and after work we would kind of be sitting around, and he would tell stories, and I could get him going about stuff. It was incredible, you know.
And I know that, like all of us, we were all Beatles fans growing up, and I know that you tended to lean more towards bands like the Stones and also the Kinks, right?
Oh, I love the Kinks. Yeah, the first time I heard "You Really Got Me," that was wow. You know, I said, "Yeah, electric guitar. I get it now. That's it."
I want to ask about another artist, the late great David Bowie.
David, the nicest guy ever. When David Bowie smiled at you, you were smiled at. You knew you were getting smiled at. And real smart guy. I actually met him at a party in the city, and he asked me to be. Said he was going to shoot a video the next day, and he wanted to know if I wanted to be in the video, and I said sure. And then about 15, 20 minutes go by, we're again off with other people at the party. And a woman, Coco, who worked with him, came over and she said, "We just heard that you play the guitar." He just wanted me to be in the video because I looked weird, you know, and he wanted to get some weird looking people in the video. He said, "I heard you play the guitar." I said, "Yeah." She says, "Good, you can be the guitar player in the video. So bring your guitar." And then I didn't do a whole lot of work with David, but we did go out and do the Johnny Carson show. And Richard Pryor was on, so I got to meet Pryor, and that was great.
Wow.
And we did Ashes to Ashes, which was his new single at the time. And then we also did Life on Mars, one of his great songs. And to get to play that was a real honor, you know. But a nice guy, David.
G.E. Smith is with us, and he's got a new album called Stony Hill with Leroy Bell. Two more artists I want to ask you about that you had worked with. The first one is Roger Waters.
Roger, one of the biggest thinkers about what he's going to put on stage. I mean, Mick thinks a lot about what he's going to put on stage, you know. Roger plans and works. I worked with him doing The Wall, you know, that show, which was a huge production.
Didn't they have monitors like the size of stadiums or something?
Oh,
I mean,
he had the most incredible sound system, and the digital video effects were specially developed for that tour. And they could project different images on all those different bricks in the wall once the wall came up halfway through the show. And it was just amazing. And yeah, Roger, and again, was very generous. You know, we would do, when we were out on the road, you know, we'd have a couple days off, and he'd often go investigate something up in the mountains in Bulgaria or something, and he'd take me along, you know, which was great. Here, hold on, let me get rid of this. So, you know.
What's it like being on a stage for like the Wall tour? Because it's so massive and huge. Obviously it's not a, you know, a station wagon gig where you show up at a roadhouse, but I mean, stepping onto a stage like that where there's so much room and it's so vast, it's got to kind of take your breath away. Maybe the first time you stepped onto that Wall stage.
Every time. I would do it, you know, and the Wall played to huge audiences. The first few months we did like indoor arenas, you know, 20, 25,000, which is a big audience. Then it got so big that we had to take it outside into stadiums and stuff. So now we're doing 60,000, 75,000 people. And every night we'd come on and get set in our positions, and there was like I think it was a 20-second little check you'd hear in your ear to make sure everybody was hearing and everything was on, because it was all computer. It was run, you know. You had to hit your mark and do things and be there.
It's definitely not just a concert.
No,
Definitely.
this was not just a band playing. No, this was something. But during those 20 seconds, I would look out from the dark at the audience and remind myself every night, yeah, you're here, you're doing this, but this is not your real life. Remember that, you know?
Unbelievable.
I tried to tell myself.
G.E. Smith is with us. He's got a new album called Stony Hill with Leroy Bell. The last artist I want to ask you about is Bob Dylan.
Bob. Again, I was a huge Dylan fan from the first album, which came out when I think I was probably 11. And I got it because if you remember the first album, it's just him and his holding up his guitar on the side, and he looks really young. You know, so I'm a guitar player and I'm looking at this guy who's got a guitar kind of like mine. And I'm going, oh, let me check this out. And I got it, you know, I really got it. And it was really an honor to play with Bob. Again, a very intelligent guy, well-read. I like to read. I've read a lot of books. I didn't even get started compared to Bob. You know, there wasn't a book I could say that he didn't know about. And we had a lot of great talks, and he taught me a lot of music. He would say, listen to this, you know, he'd play me a song on the bus, you know, like a cassette tape or something, you know, back in those days. Check this out. You should know about this guy. Learn this song. And that was invaluable to me. I still play a lot of songs that I learned from him, learned from Bob. That was great playing with him. And we traveled wonderful places, you know.
I heard that, like, when you are on stage with Bob, like, it's sort of like, I don't know how to describe it, but you sort of have to keep your eye on him because you're not sure where you're going to go.
Well, you have to do that with anybody you're playing with. You got to pay attention, you know. But with Bob, it was definitely like that, especially in those days. It was very kind of seat of the pants, which I really enjoy. I've always loved doing that, like barely knowing what you're going to do. And in some cases with him, you didn't know what you were going to do. He would just start a song and we would just kick in, and we had a great time.
G.E. Smith is his name. The new album is Stony Hill with Leroy Bell. Everyone should go out and get it. And G.E.
Can I say something, Jonathan, about the Stony Hill record? Right now, a good place to start, if people could just go on YouTube and look at America, the single America, and watch that video and listen to that song. That's out right now. The whole album won't be out till the end of August.
And the other song is, what was the other song? That's kind of the first single, right? The
other one, well, that was just kind of
cover.
A starter. It's called Black is the Color. It's an old traditional folk song, like Appalachian, Kentucky type folk song. And I've been doing that song for a long time. But I've kind of rocked it up a little bit, you know.
Yes, I agree, in a
Leroy
good way.
It takes on a whole nother level of meaning, and he's such a great singer that he really brings something to it. So,
well, listen, man, I can't wait to see you back on a stage with your band and Leroy, and I know you can't wait for that either. You must be going crazy, right?
You know it. So, you know, the record, it's on Spotify and iTunes and all those places, you know, so people can check it out.
Again, the new album is Stony Hill. It's from G.E. Smith and Leroy Bell. Everyone go out and check out the video for America, and Black is the Color. You can check them out on YouTube, and G.E. is on Facebook, and there's gesmithmusic.com. G.E., a real honor and pleasure to speak with you, sir. And again, I'll say it again. I cannot wait to have you back on a stage somewhere in the tri-state area where everyone can come and check you out.
I miss it.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.